Hey, welcome to episode number 228 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast. We are recording January the 28th, 2024. My name's Eric, host of the show based in Southern Ontario. As a first responder, witness an over-reliance on emergency services during major events. Started a small preparedness company to help people get better prepared for at least 72 hours, if not longer.
My name is Ian. I'm a homesteader on Vancouver Island.
I'm Scott, a first responder from Northern Ontario, worried about our fragile infrastructure.
And I'm Jeff from Central Ontario. I'm a target shooter, ham radio operator, general overall handyman, and weather nerd.
And we've got the Altons this evening.
Hello.
Hi. Well, I was waiting for them to introduce me. I'm like,
Okay.
not part of the
All right.
regular crew
Well,
here.
we should say who we are. Let's introduce ourselves.
Go ahead, you
Canadian Prepper Podcast style. I'm Joe Alton, MD. I'm a physician, a medical preparedness advocate, and co-author of the Survival Medicine Handbook, the essential guide for when help is not on the way.
And I'm Amy Alton. I'm an advanced registered nurse practitioner and a certified nurse midwife. And I love to garden and grow as much herbal medicine as we can in sunny, hot South Florida.
And you're a designer of
Oh, yes.
of an entire line of medical kits over at
That's true.
store.doomandbloom.net.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, welcome back to the show. It's always an honor to have you you both attend the show and chat with us and share your knowledge. So we're happy to have you back again.
Well, it's great to be here,
Thank
and we
you.
really appreciate all the things that you do for Canadian preppers. I mean, we just don't have the kind of commitment, I think, here in at least in the States that you guys have to really being prepared. I guess because of our milder climate, perhaps.
That's what I was just going to say. Right. You guys have to live in much harsher living conditions.
Yes, we're suffering here in South Florida at 60 degrees. So, you guys,
Fair enough.
rugged survivalists to us.
It's a little bit of snow here right now, but we'll survive.
Good.
But we'll start things out here with a quick disclaimer. Any and all information put forth by Dr. Joe and nurse practitioner Alton are meant for educational and entertainment purposes only and do not represent medical advice. Please seek standard and modern medical care whenever and wherever it is available.
All right, and if you want to help support the show, you can embrace our new intro and buy some swag. We have both the Canadian Prepper Podcast t-shirt, as proudly displayed by myself, and the Tactical Velcro patch at www.prepperpodcast.ca. All the proceeds help cover the podcast costs.
If you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and submit a review wherever you may have found us. We also invite you to reach out and tell us something you learned this week or anything you want to see on the show. You can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
All right, so we've got some medically focused content for you in this episode. We're going to start off with some recent news articles. We'll update you on our personal preps. Then we're going to get into the main topic. We're getting into assembling and maintaining a basic first aid kit. So moving to the news.
All right, I actually breezed over this article right off the bat, but then I came back to it and I was like, wait a minute, this is perfect for the show here, actually. So a passenger in a helicopter crash here in northern BC actually used a radio call to call for help after the crash. Crash was one thing, but the more important thing about this story is they were all dressed for the weather. So the people that did survive the crash had to spend the night outside. They used their radio skills to call for help. And most importantly, they had access to a first aid kit and perform first aid. So
Nice.
it worked out very well. So yeah, they still had a few people die, unfortunately, in the crash, which was a horrible thing. But still, I mean, the people that survived probably wouldn't have if they hadn't have been a little bit prepared ahead of time. So good for them. So I left the link in the show notes. I think Eric's going to post it up on the chat there. And the other one that actually was kind of relevant to the show tonight in Northern Ontario, just about 3 hours north of where Eric lives, there is actually a problem with a lack of medical staff, mostly doctors, of course. So it's so bad to the point where they have 10,000 patients that are losing access to primary care. So they will not have a family doctor as of next week. And they just basically said, so sorry, nobody's available. You're on your own. So this episode might come in handy after all for them.
Is that a rural area?
It's a good sized city for Northern Ontario, but it is still, by American standards, small. But it's a very large area that they cover, and touches on Scott's kind of neck of the woods, but not quite.
We're having the same thing going on here, except it's mostly in our rural areas. Are really having trouble finding physicians to staff smaller towns, and and it's become quite a problem.
Yep.
Well, the issue we're seeing is there's all sorts of patients that don't have that primary healthcare access. So all of a sudden their fallback is to go to the emergency room. And for us, it's, a 12-hour wait in the emergency room is quite typical.
Wow.
Terrifying, but typical.
That's absolutely scary. And, the fact that you have to triage people, and there are a lot of people that can come in after you, even though you've been waiting there hours, that really need to be seen first and dealt with first.
And you just keep getting put back further and further.
Put further and further back, depending on what your problem is.
It's terrible.
Yeah. That's pretty much all I had.
I've got a quick little one. Before I go any further on it, I'm just going to say we're not getting political about this, not taking any sides on it, saying who's right, who's wrong, whatever. There is a truckers convoy that's going to happen in the U.S. Starting, I believe, tomorrow and ending February 3rd. It's basically something similar to what we had up here in Canada with the COVID stuff. It's to do with the border issues. I'm just bringing it forward more for situational awareness for everybody. They're going to do their little convoy, and then they're going to end up at 3 places when they're done. So they're going to be at Eagle Pass, where everything is going on. They're going to be in Yuma, Arizona, and San Cerrito. I hope I pronounced that correctly, in California. So who knows what's going to happen out of it? Could become like our protest, that it started as nothing and ballooned, or it could be a big thing and fizzle out to nothing. But it's kind of what I'm getting at again is the situational awareness, possible supply chain issues. If the borders are stopped, in Canada, we get a lot of our fruits and vegetables in the winter from Mexico. And if stuff can't get across the border, it's not going to happen right away, but we could start to see some supply chain issues. So just keep that in mind and pay attention a little bit.
Yeah, we're very spoiled. We wind up, you can be in British Columbia and get bananas. So, that they're not coming from there. So
maybe a greenhouse, though.
we really have been spoiled and really blessed by how well the supply chain actually works in most cases.
Well, I think when all of us were younger, I'm not sure how old everybody is, but I know in the 70s and the 80s, like if something wasn't in season, it wasn't in the store. Like you had to wait to buy watermelon, in the fall, in corn. You weren't getting these things all year round. You would go to the grocery store and whatever was in season was what's in the fruit and vegetable section. I guess there was some things that they got supplied all the time, but most of it was, did they just pick it? Are the apples ready and now they're going to be in the store?
You ate seasonally and regionally. Basically.
Yeah. You didn't get asparagus year round.
Yeah, they're going back to that now because it's more environmentally friendly anyways, I guess. So, yeah, it's kind of a bit full circle on that one.
Darn, I like my asparagus year round. I can't grow.
Right, so shall we move? We've done lately for preps.
So rather timely, I've actually been playing with a couple of first aid kits for the car and house. I've decided rather than having kind of mismatched ones everywhere, I want identical ones in the vehicles and one at home so you can swap them out. And when you're looking for something, it's always in exactly the same place. So basically just a couple of large sort of IFAC kits and then some of the stuck in the car comfort items, sort of Mylar sleeping bags and blankets and calories and candles and such. So it seems timely given the show.
Very nice.
I did a little bit of vehicle maintenance, had a couple of small issues with the truck, nothing big, got them fixed. Considering that we are above freezing here in central Ontario and there's no snow and I can't get out on my snowmobile, I had needed something to do. So I've been doing some more experimenting with my pressure canner, trying to get my comfort level up with using that. So I'm feeling a lot better about it. Still have a bit to go, but I'm feeling a lot more confident about myself on that one.
Very nice. For myself, it's been a week full of working and a house full of sick kids and a sick wife. So no preps for me this week. It's just been looking after them when I've had the chance and work and a little bit more work.
Sounds fun.
yeah.
Well, thanks to the warm weather I was talking with Dr. Alton about before the show, we've had what they call a Pineapple Express roll into town. I think they used to call it Pineapple Express. Now it's offensive to pineapples or something, so now they call it an atmospheric river. Anyways, and so with that heavy rain, or with the warm weather, we get the heavy rain. So unfortunately, I can't do much outside. It's pretty monsoony. So inside, I've been working on refinishing the rifle stock that I had on an antique Mauser. Did some programming on a couple of UV-17s that showed up in the mail. Yeah, much more improved version of the UV5R. See here, I did do some chirp programming on that, and backed up some computer files on the brand new backup hard drive. Well, my daughter was farm sitting for us last week when we were doing our little trip to the States. She ate all my Band-Aids, it seems. Like, I honestly legit think she took some home with her, and then she also used a bunch too. And so I was like, I think I need to go out and get Band-Aids of all things. I don't know what for, but anyways, so yeah, I had to do that. Finished some shed shelving inside the hay shed just because it was like sheltered and I could work in there. Miloed up some rice, and then the interesting thing was I actually got to go to a meet and greet with like some like-minded people, so that was pretty fun.
Oh, yay.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, so it was. It's not often I get to do that. Because I have to go out and people and interact, and it's just not me. But also the fact is that it was like you knew ahead of time that when you went there they were all like-minded, and so there's 200 of us or thereabouts, and
Wow.
it was a really good meetup. It was well done. But then I had to run to Vancouver for that, so it was kind of ate up a bit of time. And then just one last thing, I just did a little roof over my propane tanks that cover our gas range and stuff, so they wouldn't rust up on me, and that's pretty much it.
Very
Well,
nice.
we received a box of antibiotics, fish antibiotics, probably the last that we'll receive ever. And maybe if we have time, we can talk about that later.
Sounds like a plan. Well, with that, we will move into the main topic. So, like we mentioned at the beginning, we've got Dr. Alton and Nurse Amy here to talk about first aid kits and kind of just building a basic kit, kind of getting what you need into a kit, and just answering some general questions about first aid kits. And maybe we'll get into a little bit of training if we've got some time. And then we'll touch on the antibiotics as well.
Okay.
So we'll kick off with the first question of just what are the essential items that should be included in a basic first aid kit. We'll just go with home use for now.
Well, of course, we're not talking about someone who's got a hand cut off or a severe broken leg or anything, gunshot related, just basic run of the mill home little injuries. So I would start off with gloves, because anytime you touch something that is open, you want to make sure that you have gloves on. And I think one of your questions later is what kind, but go ahead and mention, we always put nitrile, hypoallergenic, because you don't know who you're touching sometimes, I guess at home, but you could have kids' friends over or your friends over, and you don't know that they have an allergy. So just keep the hypoallergenic gloves. It's not a bad idea. Gauze and Band-Aids. Ian was just talking about the loss of Band-Aids. That's one of the common things. We get in the kitchen, we start cooking, and we don't pay attention to what we're cutting. And what do? Fingers. And actually, I personally keep the Band-Aids in with the knives and the forks because then they're just right there. I know they're there. I also, not a home kit that I'm mentioning, but personally, I put a little hemostatic gauze in there too, just in case it's a little deep and I need to put something on there, just to make sure it stops bleeding. So various sizes of gauze. You can do sterile for after you clean it, and the non-sterile is good for just pressure, because most bleeding stops with just pressure. I'm not sure everyone understands that. You don't need these hemostatic gauze for 80 to 90% of wounds. Just stop with pressure, because your body wants to clot. You just give it a chance with some pressure, your body will stop the bleeding. Some tapes, again, various types. There's Elasticon, which is stretchy. There's paper tape, elastic tape. Again, if you have someone with allergies, make sure it's hypoallergenic. Ace bandages are good, triangular bandages. Soap. I know most people don't think of soap, and obviously in your house you will have soap, but you want to wash your hands before you put the gloves on. And also, when you're cleaning up a wound, it doesn't have to be some special kind of thing. Just soap and water cleans up a wound. Just scrub it really well with some of that non-sterile gauze if it seems to have any kind of debris. Of course, it'd be helpful to have some bandage scissors to cut the tape, to cut the gauze, to cut up the triangular bandage if you need it, or the ace bandage. Antibiotic cream. So after you've cleaned up the wound, you want to put a little cream on it because maybe it was a little dirty, the utensil you used to cut yourself. Antibiotic creams, if somebody's again allergic, make sure that you have an alternative for them of one that they're not sensitive to. Analgesics are good. Tylenol. Don't give aspirin to anyone under age 19. Ibuprofen's good. I think hot water bottles, the old-fashioned red ones, the real thick ones. You know, we all think heating pads for heating injuries, but if we don't have electricity, I have one of those thick red hot water bottles or bags. They're really good. An ice bag also, same thing. You have heat and cold. Good for a lot of issues. Instruments. Now you want to think about, again, bandage scissors, tweezers, maybe a hemostat, so you can, you know, pick things out if you need to. These are just some basic things. Again, not getting into any trauma supplies.
I would say also, I would add to that some shake and break ice packs. I think you mentioned.
I did. I said an ice bag, but again, I guess if you don't have ice, but they have snow.
Yeah. I guess that's
not all year round. Not all year round.
Right. So yeah, shake and break those instant ice packs. They don't obviously get as cold as if you put ice and water in an ice bag. And actually, that's the better thing to do. You don't want to put ice directly on a wound. So water and ice, and then put like a washcloth may be too thick, but at least some gauze in between it, because if you directly put ice onto skin, it could actually, you know, do a cold burn. So you can actually, you know, add more injury to it. So for our ice bags, or, you know, if I just use a Ziploc bag, plastic bag, I always mix water and ice, and then I have a barrier between it. So make sure you protect the skin. You don't want to make it any worse.
I'm with you.
That's some really good points. So how often should we be checking and updating the contents of a first aid kit that we've got?
So I would say, based on, you know, all the hundreds and hundreds of expiration dates that I've seen on various medical supplies, 2 years is probably good. Check it when you get it. Depends on your source of who's sending you the bag. But even if something, quote, like a Tylenol or aspirin expires in a year, you can still wait that extra year. Now, if it's creams, you have to be more careful. You need to watch those more closely. Anything that's liquid, also go by the expiration date. If it's solid, or let's say it's a Band-Aid or gauze, and believe it or not, they put expiration dates on gauze. They even put expiration dates on an Israeli bandage, which is basically an ace and a piece of gauze. And plastic, and there's no reason for an expiration date.
Those are usually about 5 years, I think.
Yeah, 5 years, which will be good in 200 years. You know, because there's nothing that's going to go bad on an Israeli bandage that you need to worry about. So use some common sense, but, you know, take a look at especially the medicines about every 2 years.
Good to know. Speaking of medicines, are there any specific over-the-counter types of medications that would be important to have in a first aid kit?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I happen to have my list here.
Article.
An article that I wrote exactly on that subject, and
Awesome.
Tailor-made. Of course, pain relievers are going to be very important. You're going to be overexerting yourself in a disaster situation, so you know, you're going to wind up doing something to your back, or having just muscle aches just from working. And so things like ibuprofen are very useful to have. It's a popular pain reliever. It's anti-inflammatory. It reduces fever. Used for a lot of different things. A great stockpile item, and it's something that you can take in dosages. The good thing is that you can control things. You have just a little bit of pain, you can just take one every 4 hours. You can take up to 4 every 8 hours if you absolutely had to. It just depends on you know, just what's going on and what pain we're talking about. Then there's acetaminophen. Acetaminophen has the same fever reducing and pain relieving effect, but it is not an anti-inflammatory, but it's still useful to have because because ibuprofen has a tendency to cause stomach upset in a number of people. So you might want to have some of that acetaminophen available. Also, now I mentioned aspirin here, not because I think people should be using it regularly. I think that aspirin is something you shouldn't use on anyone that's less than 19 years of age,
Right.
because
I said
of
that.
a neurological condition called Ray's syndrome that can cause severe nerve damage, and so it's something you can't use for that. But it is very useful as a blood thinner. And so if you have somebody that is on Coumadin or some other blood thinner in normal times, and you see that things are going awry, and you're not going to be able to get this anymore, they're not going to be making Coumadin anymore because of World War III or whatever post-apocalyptic event you'd like to choose.
Some water if you need it.
Oh, thanks so much.
Sure.
Then aspirin would be an excellent choice, or it probably would be your only choice. Also, of course, it's useful in the case of a heart attack. You would give somebody 325 milligrams of aspirin, which would be 4 baby aspirin. If you take, some people take baby aspirin on a regular basis, so you would take 4 of them if somebody had chest pain that was reminiscent of a heart attack and you're just not sure if that's what's going on.
Make sure they chew them, because your mouth starts absorbing them. Somebody with a heart attack needs that ASAP. So have them chew them. I know aspirin may have a coating on it. You know, the ones that are non-chewable are going to taste absolutely horrible, but they need the aspirin absorbing. Your mouth is really good at absorbing your mucous membrane. So start that right there. Also, if somebody is, having a heart attack in front of you and they're go unconscious and you happen to have the aspirin, what I'm going to do for him, and I'm not saying that everyone has to do this, I'm going to pre-chew this aspirin, and I'm going to wipe that off my tongue, and I'm going to pull his lower lip down, and I'm going to swipe it in his mouth down there, down here, and on his cheeks, so he can start absorbing that when I start CPR. So if I had the aspirin and he can't chew it, I'm going to do it for him.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I really want him to live.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
That's my little thing that I think, okay, what do I do?
Other things that we should use, you could use is loperamide. Of course, there's a high likelihood of food and water contamination in the aftermath of a disaster. So something like loperamide, which is a brand name Imodium in the States, is something that's very, very useful. It slows intestinal motility, and causes less water loss from the body and thus dehydration. And so that's very useful. Also, on the people with diarrhea also and stomach upset oftentimes have nausea. And so meclizine, also known as Dramamine down here, is very useful to have as an over-the-counter. On the opposite end, let's say if you're taking MREs, which are called meals ready to eat, they don't have a lot of fiber in them, and so they can cause severe constipation in times of trouble. Matter of fact, MREs are sometimes called meals refusing to exit. And basically, you could use ducosate sodium, which over here is called Colace, as a stool softener. Some antibiotic cream is very useful to have. It can be a cream or ointment form. Right. Benadryl or diphenhydramine, that is a very useful antihistamine, and also interestingly enough, at higher doses is an excellent sedative and will help put you to sleep.
Actually, that's what's in Tylenol PM, is 50 milligrams of Benadryl.
There you go, of diphenhydramine.
Yeah. And
hydrocortisone cream, of course, for skin inflammation, dermatitis, and flakiness, itchiness, things like that. Acid reflux, things like calcium carbonate, magnesium sulfate, omeprazole, cimetidine, ranitidine. These are all popular brands of acid reflux and ulcer disease kind of acid relievers. There's fungal medications, antifungal medications, clotrimazole, miconazole. These are useful, and multivitamins. I mean, in situations where you're not going to be able to assure complete nutrition, you want to possibly eliminate the possibility of a vitamin deficiency. So have some multivitamins available. So that's what I would. That's a good dozen over-the-counter medications or over-the-counter
obviously not
items.
100% complete, but it's a good start.
Right.
No, I would never thought of the multivitamins. That's a good addition. I would never have even thought about putting that into a first aid kit. I like that.
And I would say also that you don't have to take them on a daily basis. Most of the time, right. Much of the vitamins that we take are just excreted in our urine and excrement. So I would say in situations where you're going to have a limited amount of vitamins, even though you stockpiled some, I would maybe have my people take a multivitamin once a week or a couple of times a week, just to make sure there are not a lot of deficiencies.
That's a really good point about the MREs as well. Like, of course, a lot of people will stockpile those, but nothing to offset the inevitable result there too. So
yes, indeed.
Yeah, so since we're on the topic of medications, we do have a quick question in the live chat as well from Dave. He's just asking, does the no aspirin to minors rule apply to all NSAIDs, or is it just the aspirin?
Just the aspirin.
Just the aspirin.
And I'm not sure why, actually, but
it's just the aspirin.
It's just aspirin.
Good to know. All right, so we talked a little bit about bandages and antiseptic kind of wipes for some wounds. Is there any other wound care supplies that should be part of your standard first aid kit?
And actually, just as before we get going on that, you had to settle an argument with my wife and I. So this is actually, it's kind of a funny one. So on this topic, we've always had the argument of clean and dry wounds versus like something like a polysporin or an ozonol or whatever. Which is there actually a benefit to those, or are they more just like snake oil in the industry there?
I think they're more preventative. Some people don't clean their wounds real well. Plus, you know what? Honestly, all wounds heal better within a wet environment, a moist environment. It increases wound healing.
Yes, new cells that are granulating in love a moist environment.
Right.
And so if you put anything that is very caustic,
raw honey. Raw honey is a perfect little, put that on your Band-Aid before you put it on. Just a little dab. I have raw honey in all my kits.
Unprocessed.
Yeah, unprocessed raw honey.
A lot of
Did you win the argument?
I did.
You did? Oh, good for you.
There's also the advantage of being bacteriostatic. So you've cleaned the wound. You're preventing anything else from getting in.
Yep. Because of the pH being so low. Absolutely.
That's the idea.
Yeah, it's perfect. And the great thing is all these other things have expiration dates. Raw honey, we all know, unprocessed raw honey has no expiration date.
Forever.
So that's a prepper's dream to have something like that.
Excellent.
Yeah, we have quite a bit.
Anything else for wound care at all?
Oh, well, I mean, if we're talking about just other things, your butterfly bandages are really helpful. If you have a little cut that's kind of maybe on a joint, an elbow, a knee, something that's going to keep pulling apart, a Band-Aid isn't really going to help it heal real well. So those little butterfly bandages, or if you want to make the investment, steri strips are a little bit more expensive. They basically both do the same thing. Butterfly bandages might be a little nicer, though, because there is a spot in the middle that doesn't have tape. Whereas steri strips, the entire strip has tape. Give and take.
Now I will say this about wound closure. If you want an inexpensive way to close a wound, you can use super glue. And the medical super glue and the industrial super glue is really about the same thing. They're both cyanoacrylates. One's N-butyl cyanoacrylate. The other one's N-octyl cyanoacrylate. They're almost exactly the same, except that the medical version costs $50 and
needs a prescription.
Yeah, right. And it does stand up a little better to being wet. But basically, I know that these are excellent ways to close wounds because they're used in thousands of emergency room visits in countries that don't have two nickels to rub together. Places like Cuba, let's say. There are studies from Cuba that show that there's actually a lower infection rate if you use super glue on a wound than if you use a lot of the other closure methods. And as a matter of fact, putting antibiotic cream on a super glue closure actually degrades the super glue. So it would be a bad thing to use antibiotics.
But you don't need it anyway because you've just sealed it. Yes. I mean, that's the whole point. You've just sealed the wound so nothing can get in it with the super glue.
That's right.
Of course, again, if you've got a wound that's on, knuckles or wrists or, something that's going to bend, the same thing's going to happen with the super glue as the Band-Aid. It's just going to, open back up. So in that case, you definitely want to just move into the suture or the steri-strips or the butterfly bandages. So another helpful thing for wounds is just to be able to see them. I mean, if you happen to not have electricity, which I'm sure you guys have experienced situations where, the storm is bad enough, you can't see real well. Headlamps are really helpful when you've got to see what you're doing and then your hands are free, especially if you're trying to clean a wound or pick something out of a wound with tweezers. Having your hands free because of a headlamp is really good. So get a headlamp and some extra batteries. It's really helpful.
Oh, fantastic. Yes, headlamps are awesome for pretty much anything preparedness, but definitely have a place in when performing medical care for sure.
Yeah, especially if you're going to deliver a baby. You need to see.
Good point. Yeah. Good point.
That was almost my second.
Are there any specific items that are often overlooked but are critical for a well-rounded first aid kit?
So we have some specialty kits that most people don't think to put in their kits, and I include some of those supplies in my bigger backpacks. But I would say one of the most overlooked is probably dental equipment. People for some reason kind of separate dental issues from trauma, those kind of things. They just, for some reason, their brain doesn't say, oh, gee, let me do something in case we have to pull a tooth or put a temporary filling in. So we have dental equipment in case, like 60, 70 years ago, the only way to solve a dental problem was to have the tooth removed. That's how they solved everything. If you went into a dentist and said, they said, okay, lay back, we're going to take this tooth out. So that solves all dental problems. When you don't have electricity and you don't have a fully functioning dental system. So that's what we have. We have a kit. People a lot of times don't think about that.
Let me say something about that. That people don't realize that, dental supplies may not be that important if you're a few days without power due to a storm.
Right.
But if you really believe that there is going to be something that occurs that's going to take society to the brink, and you're going to be maybe 6 months without power, or longer.
Right.
Well, dental issues become very, very important.
Right.
And the dental supplies become, could be life-saving in some circumstances.
Right. Another thing is OB. I mean, we just talked about, the headlamp for delivering baby. People don't think about that either. Like, what if somebody gets pregnant? And you say, oh, well, nobody's pregnant now, but in a situation where your teenagers get a little older, or your neighbors or people down the street have a baby, somebody's got to think about.
Or as you say, the lights go out for 6 weeks. What are you going to do to keep yourself busy?
Yeah. Have babies, make babies.
Well, they're going to make.
Someone was going to go there.
They won't be enough to grow. You have to be out for 10 months in order for that one to come out. We got to grow it now. It's 9 months, but yeah, OB supplies. Baby delivery supplies. So I do actually make a specific OB kit. And the wonderful thing is I found the exact kit, the sterile part of my kit, the big bag that's full of supplies that we unwrap is the same exact sterile kit that we used in the hospitals to deliver the babies. Same company. So I order most of my single medical supplies and some of my pre-made sterile kits from this company, and they have the same one. So that's actually included in the OB kit. Other things are specific to eye injuries, like an eye shield, eye wash. There's also something called a magnet and loop. And it's just a little instrument. On one side, there's a loop, and it can help pull out things that have gotten in the eye that are not necessarily impaled. If there's something metallic, the magnet side will help pull that out. So if you get, metal shards in there, little flecks of things, it will pull them out. So that's a really helpful little handy thing. Nasal injuries. You don't think of maybe a nasal speculum and nasal packing and nasal splint. So I have a whole nose kit for nose trauma. So it's just these specific things, then you think about the ear, you might want to, otoscope, just things for different areas of the body that aren't necessarily in regular kits.
And I would just say that also you have to decide what you're concerned about as the society-ending event. If it's going to be an infectious disease like a super Ebola or a super COVID of some sort, with I understand that there's a lab in China that has developed 100% fatal a COVID virus that's 100% fatal to mice, humanized mice. As a matter of fact, apparently they have some DNA similarities to humans. So if that's your concern, then you might need to get instead of just gloves, you may need gloves, and you may need masks, or maybe face shield, maybe gowns, maybe aprons, so to prevent splatter from people that might be sick and coughing or having bodily fluids touch you that might be very contagious.
It's just what we need is a super COVID.
Right. Right, exactly.
Right,
what were they thinking? Why are they doing that?
That is a great question.
Shut the door. My kid just got home.
Oh, yeah. So maybe we'll shift gears a little bit and we'll go sort of away from the home type of first aid kit and shift more into like an outdoor activities, like camping, wilderness survival type of kit. So we're looking at maybe the possibility of some bigger trauma, some more interesting type of injuries. What should we be including in a kit like that?
So again, just exactly what you're talking about, trauma, broken bones. So I would then add your hemostatic gauze. There are a few varieties. They're all equal to me. Celox, Quick Clot, and Kaido Sam are all excellent products. They're all gauze-like, and they're basically used by putting it directly on the bleeding blood vessel. Pressure as hard as you can. Get your whole body over it. 3 minutes minimum. At least 3 minutes. It may take a little longer. If you let go and you see the gauze soaking, get your hand back on there. 3 minutes is not a magic number. People start bleeding at different times. If somebody is on aspirin or someone takes a lot of ibuprofen, there are blood thinners out there that people are taking. So, and also if someone consumes a lot of alcohol, they also have bleeding issues. So, you may have to keep it on. So hemostatic gauze, you want to add more gauze. There's something called compressed gauze. It's little bitty squares. There's tons of it. I think it's like 12 feet by 4 inches. Again, you can stuff that in the wound to help with bleeding if it's not too bad. Israeli bandages or pressure bandages. There are different, brand names, but everyone pretty much knows the emergency bandage, also known as the Israeli bandage. That comes in 4-inch and 6-inch. 4 inches, fine for smaller wounds. 6 inches is good for any size wound. So I put both in our kits. Then you want to think about irrigation. You might want to add a syringe, a 60 cc syringe for cleaning that wound after it stopped bleeding. Again, that's super, super helpful. More sterile gauze, because these are going to be dirty wounds and you really need to put sterile gauze on top of a wound that's open or dirty. If you're talking about broken bones, then we're talking about maybe having those shake and break ice packs, ACE bandages. There's something called SAM splint, which is a malleable splint. It's reusable. They tell you how to clean it. There's a super great guide that I put in there that shows you how to bend this for arms and legs and hands and shoulder injuries, and how to make it like a neck collar. Another thing, you might want to have a neck collar, unless you have one of these, and then you can make a neck collar out of it. So anything to stabilize broken bones, sprains, strains, so you can get to where you need to.
And as Amy says in our book, the Survival Medicine Handbook, we have diagrams of exactly how to place these for different types of injuries. And we also talk about the materials that you would need to cast, broken bones, and the process by which you would actually do that using either the synthetic or the plaster of Paris cast material.
Also, outdoor things I would think about, like bug bites. So I would want some sting relief pads. There's various ones, anything that'll numb the itching of bug bites, because those can be really bad, whether it's, ants or mosquitoes or whatever it is, wasp, but whatever is hurt you, you want to help numb that up. So get something with some numbing medicine to help that. And then, again, outdoors, you don't know if it's going to be light or day. Half the day is dark, a light source. So, get a headlamp with some extra batteries on it, because injuries can happen anytime. Someone gets up to go to the bathroom at 3 a.m. and they trip over a log they didn't see, and now they've got something that's hurt. So light sources. Yep. Always with the light sources.
The light's important, no matter what the scenario is, but especially in a medical type of scenario where you're providing first aid, you got to be able to see what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
So an individual that has some kind of a special medical condition, whether it be like a certain type of medication they need or something else along those lines, what would you suggest supply-wise? 90-day supply, 180-day, anything specific that people could start focusing on for building out into their kits?
Gosh, as much as you possibly can handle in terms of
if they want to start out, if you want to do goals, it's like food storage, everyone's like, oh, I need to have 2 years. But when you first buy your first container of food, like, you're not thinking 2 years, you're thinking, okay, 5 days. Okay, now I'm going to do 2 weeks. Now I'm going to do a month. You have to build up gradually. So I hate to overwhelm people. So yeah, I'd say 30, 60 days to start, and then just build. If you get that, like, you can check a box off rather than having this really long goal and you're like, I can never get there, but you make yourself little goals along the way. It's not, I don't know if you guys like this, but I always like to play school, and whatever I did, I like to check things off. So if I have more check boxes, I'm very happy. So start off with low and then build it up, and you can keep checking them off.
Well, that's awesome. Is there any certain way that you guys would organize a first aid kit for ease of access, or like a different way of like certain priorities within a kit?
So I have I have my big backpack, which I have organized a certain way. That would take us too long to go over, but I have this trifold bag.
You want to have a bag that allows you to compartmentalize.
Yeah, this has 3 different sections. So generally, this is called my medium bag. So what I put in the front are things that you would need like first. So your gloves, your mask, your hand sanitizer. I put in the irrigation syringe. I put the wipes in there. In the second section, I put the honey in there also. And honey is also, by the way, good for low blood sugar. In the second section, I put all the instruments and all the trauma supplies. So then you have your tourniquet, which, I don't know, we got off track when we were talking about that. The tourniquet, besides the hemostatic gauze and the Israeli bandage, that's your 3 important things for bleeding. So I put the tourniquet, the hemostatic gauze, the compressed gauze. I put the chest seals, again, all the instruments in there. And I also put the moleskin, which, is a secondary thing. I put the steri strips, which again is, after you've cleaned it and stopped the bleeding there. And then the back part, I put the SAM splints, I put the ACE wrap, the triangular bandage, the Mylar, and all the gauze, every gauze in there, and anything else I put in there. It's like, that's how I really organize it, because the last thing you're going to do is cover the wound. And I also put my tapes back there. So anything that you're doing after that.
And it depends on how many compartments you actually have.
Right, how big.
You can specialize each module depending on the amount of space that you have available. So that's one thing that you can do.
The other thing I do is the kit that we carry in our car. I took a black marker, and this is not the kit, but I have it on my kitchen table. I actually wrote on the canvas that you just saw in permanent black marker exactly what's in there: gloves, mask, hand sanitizer, where the band-aids are, with, tourniquet. So if somebody else opens up my kit and needs to take care of me, they can look at this and know exactly where everything is. Oh, I need the tourniquet. Okay, I see it's in this zipper pack, so I open that up. So I do that. I know it kind of ruins your kit, but for me, if somebody else, it's friendly for them and they have to take care of me, it means everything. I have to write on my kit, I'll write on my kit.
Well, even in a really bad situation with high adrenaline flying everywhere, having that reminder right in front of you could be worth everything, right? You could, instead of flipping through trying to find it, you know exactly where it is. It's written right there. I think that's a fantastic idea. I don't think it's ruined anything.
And
that's awesome.
I also always attach, I think we're going to talk about CPR masks, but I always attach a CPR mask to the outside of kits so that nobody even has to open it, because that's like so like now, you know, I need this now.
Yep.
Like somebody stop breathing. I can't be going through zippers and trying to pull things out and look for, I need this right now. So I attach those CPR masks, if they're included in a kit, on the outside of kits.
Yeah, let's touch on CPR masks really quick. What should we be looking for in a CPR mask, or what are some main differences?
Well, I mean, there are the 50-cent $1 ones that you get on eBay. You can buy like 50 of them.
Yeah.
They're actually not too bad, honestly. I've opened them up, and you would think the plastic would be like saran wrap, like super. It's really not. It's not that bad. If I have to do it, I'm fine with those. And they have a little mouthpiece. They do work. Now, could you use that 100 times? No way. That thing's getting thrown away. You know, even if it's in a prepper situation, there's no way I'm trusting that barrier a second time. But first time, it's okay. You know, then you have the ones in the plastic containers that are about this big. Again, you're upgrading quality.
And you're upgrading the level of protection.
Yeah, thinking, also, you know, prepper-wise, there's unlikely to be some kind of tear, rip, or seam issue between the mouthpiece and the plastic, you know, that's covering the barrier. So, you know, as you go up, and those are basically the two. There's the cheap ones and then the ones in the plastic container.
I mean, the importance of the CPR mask is not just to prevent the transfer of bodily fluids, but also to decrease the sense of paralysis that occurs when you are making that decision. Am I going to intervene and put my mouth on that person's mouth?
On someone you don't know. And that is actually, I think we were going to talk about this too. That's actually why they stopped asking for people to do breaths. It didn't have anything to do with survival of the person being better. It had to do with the bystanders' hesitancy, because every minute you hesitate is a 10% higher risk that the person's going to die every 1 minute. So the person's like, should I, shouldn't I? Oh, well, they look clean, but they don't look, well, their clothes are kind of dirty. I don't know. Did I meet this person? You know, all of this stuff. And every minute's going by and nothing's happening. So they say, just don't do the breaths so the people will jump in faster, because the main thing is getting those compressions and doing them at 100 to 120 per minute. You know, singing, if you know the song, you know,
Staying alive. But
right. Just as fast as you can.
The problem is they're going to have to find a new song that does that. But how many people remember?
Yeah, because the young kids don't know. We're going to have another song with a better beat. But it's, you know, 100 to 120 times. But so that's why they did the no breaths. Now, if you know the breaths and you're by yourself, it's 30 compressions, 1 breath. 30 compressions, 1 breath. If you're 2 people, it's 15 compressions and then 1 to 2 breaths. If you can get 2 breaths in, you know, nicely and deeply, that gets some oxygen in there, and then that person can start pumping again. But if you're by yourself and you don't really know this person, you want to put your mouth on there, just do the compressions. Right. It's so important. So they really stop the breaths because they want people to not hesitate.
Interesting. So I had no idea that's why they stopped it.
Yeah. It had nothing to do with, you know, better survival. They just said people are not doing CPR because they don't put their mouth on there. Let's tell them they don't have to. If they at least do this, the person has a higher chance of living. If someone does CPR, they have, I think it's a 20 to 30% higher chance of, 2 to 3 times higher chance of survival. Like, you're really saving a life, probably. I mean, unless it's just a massive heart attack and there wasn't anything that can be done anyway. One thing I will say is they say to call 911 first, and I understand what they're saying, but I'm not going to sit on the phone and repeat and spell the street name while this person in front of me is literally going brain dead because the person on the phone didn't understand when I said Stanford Street, you know. So if you have a phone, put it on speaker and set it down and get to your business and speak if you can, because they need to send somebody, but don't wait for the ambulance and don't sit there on the phone. You need to put that on speaker and get it off of you. You need to get going. Never
That's a
wait.
good point. Every second matters, right?
It has to do with bleeding also. Again, you'll always see the trauma instructions. Call 911 first. Well, if I see blood pumping out of him, I'm not getting on the phone and speaking again. I'm here. I'm there. This is my social security number. This is when I was born. They ask you all these ridiculous questions. Well, what happened? Dude, they're bleeding to death. Just get here. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put them on speaker, but I'm going to take care of the bleeding because every drop of blood carries oxygen, keeps the brain alive, and I really he's pretty smart.
I will say this, that I think a lot of people don't realize the speed at which you lose blood from a major artery. If your femoral artery is transected or is torn, then you are losing about 600 cc's of blood a minute from a wide open femoral artery rupture. And basically, even if the ambulance arrives within 5 minutes, you may already be almost beyond the level of being able to be helped by even modern medicine.
Yep.
Good to know.
Darius had a good point. Be prepared to be exhausted afterwards. The burn. I mean, can you think about it? How many reps does anyone do in a day? He lifts weights. I don't lift weights. If I had to do CPR, I'm a strong woman, but man, I don't know how many I'm going to be able to do to you. No, I'm just kidding. You have 10 minutes, dude. No, I keep the AED right by our bed. I have one of those oxygen generators right by our bed with a mask and a nasal cannula.
I'm old, but I'm not frail.
I have the aspirin taped to the AED. The aspirin's taped to the AED. I also read a long time ago. I have no idea if it's true or not. I don't care. I'm going to do it. Cayenne pepper extract. I had that liquid also taped next to the aspirin. So he's going to get 2 droppers full of cayenne pepper extract. Although that might actually bring him back. Like smelling salts.
Never mind.
That's fantastic points. That just laying things out ahead of time and having it organized and ready to go instead of having that moment. I got to deal with something right now and trying to find it.
Yep.
That's fantastic to have it all organized and just ready.
Yep. Tape the aspirin to the outside of the AED and keep it in your room, your bedroom. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
This guy, Darius, did CPR for 18 minutes.
Wow.
Oh, you're a hero. That's so awesome. Wow.
Man,
that's a long time.
That's what?
A long time to do it.
Seriously.
He's one of our panelists as well.
That's incredible. You go, Darius.
You go.
There's a little Amy dance. All right.
Awesome. So cycling back around to the expiration dates topic. Common first aid supplies. How can we ensure that the items are still effective when we need them?
Well, I mentioned this before the show to the panelists, but there has been certainly controversy regarding when to throw away these expired medicines, and this controversy and this dilemma is not just for an individual in their household, but it's a problem for an entire country. In the United States, there are tens of millions of dollars and tens of millions of doses of various medicines that are stockpiled in the National Medical Strategic Stockpile. And these are meant to be used in peacetime emergencies or in national disaster emergencies. And I know that the military is wasteful and, they pay $10,000 for a hammer or a toilet these days. But even they realize that, there may be some waste going on here when an expiration date is reached and the forklift comes out and out goes $50 million worth of a particular drug. And so the Department of Defense, to their credit, instituted something called the Shelf Life Extension Program. And the Shelf Life Extension Program evaluated 122 different medicines that are used by medical providers in disaster situations. And common medicines, some for heart issues, some antibiotics, things like that. And they found that 88% of medicines that are in pill or capsule form are completely potent anywhere from 2 to 12 years beyond their expiration date. And I think that the ones that were 2 years beyond their expiration date were only 2 years beyond their expiration date when that lot of medicines was evaluated. And so these medicines stay completely potent. They're not dangerous. You don't, as I mentioned to the panelists, you don't grow a horn in the middle of your forehead by taking them. And they are something that, from a standpoint of the preparedness standpoint, they're certainly worth keeping around even beyond the expiration date.
Yep.
And because, let's face it, if you believe that something is going to happen that's going to take away modern medicine, then that means it's going to take away those that manufacture modern medicines as well. And so whatever you happen to have with you in your possession is basically all you're ever going to have. And so it makes sense to keep some of that medicine a little bit longer, just to make sure that, that you're not lacking if in times of trouble. So
I also just want to emphasize that there are not medicines that turn poisonous or toxic to a human being when they're taken. They're going to lose effectiveness, but they're not going to change their chemistry and now kill you. But they're dangerous, and you'll see that on the internet, because if you need that medicine to be effective for your heart issue or your diabetes or whatever it is, and you take less effective medicine, your condition may worsen or not get better. So that's why they're dangerous. But if you take, a ampicillin that's 30 years expired, it's not going to kill you.
There are, I will say this, Amy, that there
just may not work.
And Amy knows that there are some medicines that do show when they are going bad. And one of them is aspirin. Aspirin, when it goes bad, it turns
not toxic, but just
they
not really effective anymore.
Not really effective, but they actually aspirin develops a sort of vinegary or ammonia-like smell.
Smells like vinegar to me
when it gets old.
Yeah.
So that's one thing you should know.
I had a bottle that was like 20 years expired. And what I do is I use it for flowers. Like, put it in the water. When you cut flowers and you put them in a vase, it helps to keep the water running through the flowers, keeps them fresher. So I use my old aspirin for that.
And I wanted to just say that what I said about medicines in pill or capsule form did not apply to medicine that is in liquid form.
Right.
So insulin, amoxicillin elixir for children, let's say.
Lung inhalers.
Inhalers.
Nasal inhalers.
These things do lose their potency much faster, and that expiration date does mean something in those circumstances. Right. Not that day, because the day is absolutely arbitrary. The actual expiration date, which, by the way, wasn't required in the United States until the year 1979, only means that it's the last day that the company certifies 100% potency of the medicine in question. So, it's still good after the expiration date, just not very long after the expiration date, compared to medicines in pill or capsule form.
Right.
It's really good to know. Awesome. Is there any specific training that you guys would suggest individuals look into or attempt to acquire?
You want me to say? You can say it.
All right. Well,
you wrote that part. You wrote that part of the book.
Municipalities in most areas will offer CERT courses, which are basically first responder courses. Right. These are useful for the community, and they're useful for the individual as well. So that's something that I think would not be a bad idea. Red Cross offers CPR classes. The American College of Surgeons offers Stop the Bleed classes.
Oh, we're certified instructors for Stop the Bleed. Yeah, they have thousands of them across the country.
And you'll find that there are just a lot of these classes that are available that are specialty classes that are for wilderness survival.
Yeah,
and a lot of these are really very good classes by experts in the field, and I would just say that it's possible that there's some variance with regards to the quality of the training involved.
Yeah, it just depends on who's teaching.
Awesome. You guys offer some DVDs as well, correct?
Yes, they're not DVDs anymore. It's a USB, because I stopped making DVDs because every player had like different files that it would read and not read, and I was getting frustrated by trying to find the file that would work on everyone, and they didn't work on everyone. So I was like, nope, no more USBs. Everyone has a computer with a USB. Even the televisions have USB ports now, so everything's on a USB.
Amy,
I dated myself a bit by using DVD as an example. Oh, good to know. And that's attainable at store@doomandbloom.net.
Yes.
Awesome. Good to know. Did you want to talk about the fish mocks and touch on that?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to say that
briefly though, like not
briefly,
not your whole thing.
I have a rant involved.
Well, shorten it.
All right, I'm shortening the rant. All right. So this is the deal. If you know or recognize me at all, it's probably because of my writings and videos and stuff regarding medical preparedness. And I'm not talking about I'm talking about a long-term disaster situation where the medical infrastructure is broken down, and that's our main focus. And so I was the first licensed physician to write about what happens if there are no antibiotics available in times of trouble. And I had basically seen the History Channel program called After Armageddon. And in After Armageddon, a paramedic and his family tried to survive a post-apocalyptic landscape. In the show, the paramedic actually developed a minor injury, which he soon recognizes becomes infected. No one, however, has antibiotics. And so this trained professional just watched himself worsen, and he died indeed a short time later. So basically, I decided that I would check and see what was going on with regards to options for people that might save, prevent, maybe avoid some preventable deaths. Having been around the aquarium hobby and also even raised tilapia in ponds, I knew about some antibiotics that were available for fish without a prescription. I decided to check these out, and I found about a dozen appeared to be identical to those used in humans. And these few were unusual in that they were available only in human dosages. Even though they were meant to treat your pet guppy, they were available only in doses that a 180-pound adult human would be able to use, would normally use. Right. They even had the identical numbers, letters, and colors on the capsules as the human versions that were indeed made by human antibiotic companies. And so after further research, it turned out they were exactly the same. They were identical, just redistributed in different containers for the pet fish and the pet bird hobby. We also have a parrot. Now, that was a huge benefit having these available. I wrote an article that ended up in Survival Blog in 2010, telling people to be sure to get a supply of these fish antibiotics. And today, I'm sure that there are people in your audience that indeed have some of these in their medical storage. Now, this was a great benefit to the survival medic to have things like that, especially the people that are responsible for large mutual assistance groups, because you didn't need a prescription for them, and you can buy 500 of them at a time if you needed to. But in the United States, on December 14th, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration issued warning letters to manufacturers and distributors that they were in violation of federal law by offering these to the public. And they included companies like Chewy.com, Kraft Drug, Aquanest, Midland Vet, Valley Vet, California Veterinary Supply, a number of others. And so if you haven't figured it out yet, the FDA has it in for preppers, has been looking for a reason to limit our ability to get antibiotics for our medical storage. And the way they got around it this time is that they claimed that the meds used for fish and birds were never registered for approval as veterinary medicine. Therefore, the FDA is calling them new animal drugs despite their being around for at least 25 years. And the agency says that using them outside of the direct supervision of a doctor or veterinarian is bad, and indeed, you must throw them away, or you should throw them away.
Right.
And so this is a problem. Now these companies have to actually make an application for these new animal drugs, quote unquote, to be approved by the FDA, and it's never going to happen because it costs a lot of money to do it, and certainly the outcome is uncertain, and it's going to be a big issue. It may not sound like a big issue in normal times, but when the you-know-what hits the fan, that's going to be little consolation to, let's say, a parent that has a sick child, or a woman with a bacterial infection after childbirth, or a member of your family who has an infected wound. So this is an issue. Now, the medicines that are involved include all the fish mox products: Aquamox, Aquamox Forte, Aquacef Forte, Aquacipro, Aquadoxy, Aquazole, Aquazithro. So these are the majority of the antibiotics that I had identified as being identical to human antibiotics all those years ago. So anyhow, all I can say is it makes me wonder who blew the whistle on this tool for the survival medic, and who stands to gain from the inability of preppers and homesteaders to get antibiotics without going through a doctor. Well, there are companies now, I'm not going to make any accusations, but there are companies that are offering packs of various antibiotics to people who will fill out a prescription and go through a doctor. And they certainly do stand to benefit. I'm not saying that they have anything to do with this, but somebody obviously blew the whistle, and the lack of antibiotics is now one weapon less that we have, or at least the family medic has, in times of trouble.
It's unfortunate it's gone that way, but we'll just have to keep moving on and find another resource, I suppose.
That's
Yes.
right. There are you can go to Mexican pharmacies and maybe Indian pharmacies. The only problem is the quality control. I don't know. I don't have any experience with it, so I can't, with them, so I can't tell you whether it's an option or not.
So I have maybe sort of a bit of a follow-up question on that. Not so much the fish mock stuff, but Dave asked the question, and it was something that I had as well. So other than occasionally skipping a dose, how do you stockpile prescription meds? So I'm on a prescription medication. I go to my doctor. He gives me 6 months worth of prescriptions, but my pharmacy will only fill it 1 month at a time. So I have to keep going back every month to get my prescription, even though I have it for 6 months.
So my idea and what I've recommended, and I believe you put this in the book too, is to fill your prescription and ask the pharmacist, when can I come back? Because they're never going to make you wait to the last day when you take the last pill to fill it. But each insurance company is different. They may let you come back 5 days early. They may let you come back 7 days early. But every day they let you come back early are storage pills. Now, I don't want you to save that old bottle and open up the new bottle. Go ahead and take the old one, because remember, new in, old out. So you want to finish that bottle you were taking, but mark or set your phone an alarm to go get that medicine. And when you pick up the next one 7 days early, you got 7 pills now extra that's going to be left in the new bottle. And you ask them, when can I come back and refill this? Again, if they do it 7 days early, now you've got literally 14 pills left in that. So you keep doing that every single time, and that's how you accumulate. You end up with these newer bottles that you haven't even used yet, and you're still using the old stuff. But you have to ask them, because they know. I went back to our pharmacy just a few days ago and said, when can he fill it? And they're like, Saturday. So they know exactly when they're allowed to push the refills through. And, they'll notify us, hey, your refills are going through next week. Is there any changes? So set your phone alarm, get it on that day, because if you wait a day, now that's another pill that you can't save. Because remember, your new stuff you're saving, your old stuff you're taking, and eventually you're going to have bottles. So do that every single time. Make it a routine. You'll be surprised at how fast they pile up.
I've done exactly that with my medications. I actually took advantage of the automated renewal system at the pharmacy. I found out that you could actually call that, and the odd time it would actually renew it sooner than if you went in and saw a person in person, because they know what the rules are. The automated system didn't always know, and it would just sometimes magically it would go, yep, sure, renewed, come pick it up tomorrow. And nobody ever caught on, and they haven't
Right,
yet.
yeah.
So hopefully nobody is listening to this podcast that programs that automated system.
Just ask them. Say,
Worth a shot. Yeah,
say
absolutely.
when it's a harmless question, and you know what? They know the answer. They have it in their computer system, and there's no harm in them telling you, hey, you can come pick this up, in 21 days or 20 days or whatever it is. And then you do that, and you have these extra pills.
The best that worked out for me with the automated system was 3 weeks early, and I was tap dancing.
Wow. Fantastic.
One of the other things you can do at the pharmacy is ask them what the expiry date of those are. It's not written on the 28 pills you're being issued, but the supply bottle will have that, and they will happily give you that information.
Yes, they will. Absolutely. Absolutely. For sure.
Great point.
And then you can ignore it because they're capsules.
100%.
Thanks for the information I don't care about. But no, it's always good to know what the drug company says, because what if they gave you something they've had sitting around? I mean, I don't know if it's not a medicine that they use often. Maybe it's been sitting on their shelf, and maybe it is expiring in 3 months instead of 3 years. It's good for us to know this stuff. Then you say, okay, well, how long has it actually been? It's good to know. I think it's important information.
It just helps us with stock rotation.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Always. Speaking of stock rotation, I think there was a little question in with the expiration dates. I just want to adjust it real fast. Best way to store your medical supplies is exactly like your food. Out of light, out of heat, out of humidity. The same thing. The way you if you store your food that way, just put your medical equipment right next to it.
Dry, cool, dark.
Yep.
Oh, good to know. Hey, Scott, I think you had one quick question.
Yeah, one of the topics you guys discussed in your book is cleaning and repurposing a lot of medical supplies. We've come to a world where everything is single purpose or single use disposable. I'm old enough that I remember bag valve masks that we cleaned between patients. You guys in the book, discuss using a pressure cooker to steam semi-autoclave items. I look at any potential disaster scenario as a resource limited situation where, if I have to reuse a tourniquet, I need to clean and sterilize it. If I need to make sterile gauze from old T-shirts.
Gauze, right.
So I think that's an important skill to add to our discussion.
Yep, absolutely. Or sheets. This is what I have cut up. I had used this in one of the videos I did on wrapping. I think I'd use this on a head bandage in one of the videos.
Now, interestingly enough, you can actually take material like this, like cut up sheets, and you can buy kaolin powder, and you can impregnate them, the sheet with the kaolin powder, and make your own hemostatic bandages. And we think we have an article on that.
In an article. Yeah.
Okay, we should probably
for American Survival. I should do a video on it.
Yeah, that was for American Survival Guide, a magazine that's no longer in existence, I don't think.
Yeah, kaolin's super cheap.
Yeah, so you can buy
and that's what's literally stuck to Celox gauze.
So you can make a lot of these things, improvise a lot of these things, and things like triangular bandages have like a dozen different uses. You can use them as a sling. You can use them to wrap a head injury.
Oh, so many things.
These things are.
You could actually make a tourniquet out of it.
Very inexpensive. It can be used as a tourniquet with a stick or a pen.
Hold gauze on. I mean, so many various things.
Hold a splint in place. So there are a lot of versatility that goes along with this. Is that now? Was that answering his question?
No, that was not answering his question. That was a side topic. But he was talking about repurposing, sterilizing, cleaning.
Oh, yes. Well, they're
instruments, syringes, things that we normally throw away.
Hard reality. Hard reality. You're going to be reusing things that you would never think of reusing.
Right.
So you're going to be suturing a wound closed, and you'll find that you have half of the suture still left.
Right.
You're going to take that suture and you're going to put it in some antiseptic solution of your choice, and for a period of time, and you're going to reuse it if you need it.
Yeah, like
And
a Sidex
because
solution.
they're not making this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
So you're using whatever you happen to have at the point in which society hits the fan. Well, that's what you have for the rest of your life, perhaps. And so you're going to have to reuse a lot of that stuff. If you have a pressure cooker, you can definitely use it 15 psi. I think is what we use it for. 20 minutes or so will be useful. 20 minutes. And you can redo your instruments that way. You can redo dressings that way. You can also
wait. I want to mention
something.
Wait,
before, I'm going to forget this.
Okay.
I'm senile. Okay. So
go ahead.
The American Wilderness Society did a study in which they made a soup of 7 different organisms, and they dipped instruments in it, and then they used these UVC wands, ultraviolet C wands, and they hung up these instruments, and they basically passed them for about 45 seconds all the way around it. And they found that it actually killed almost all of the instruments if you used an antiseptic if you cleaned it with antiseptics first and then use the UVC wand, then you could use it immediately and it would be essentially sterile.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. So what I was going to mention is my first job within a hospital, the first year I started nursing school, was in the CSR department, Central Supply. And one of our responsibilities was going to all the nursing stations and gathering up all the equipment that they had just used, all the instruments, and we would bring them down and we get out the Hibiclins or the Sidex, and we would scrub them, and then we would scrub them with hot water, and then we'd scrub them again with the liquid, and then soak them, and then rinse them again because you don't want that on there. And then we would place them in autoclave bags, depending on the size of the instrument. Some of the instruments were pretty big, but these autoclave bags will self-seal within the sterilizer or the pressure cooker, because we'd have big giant autoclaves with like big giant doors and like a vault. And then these bags now have indicators with the bag. We would have to stick a strip of the indicator in the bag and it would turn a color. I think it would turn blue or greenish when it showed that the sterilization process had been completed. So if it had the amount of pressure for the amount of time, then that would turn and the bags would self-seal. You can buy those on Amazon, like cheap. Like I have 200 bags the size that I can fit instruments in. So when I have to reuse them, I also have a gallon of the Sidex. It may not be the brand Sidex. I have 2 or 3 different ones, but anyway, a brand of that, and then putting it in the bags, and then it indicates right there if it's sterile. And then since it's self-sealed, now you can put those anywhere. Put them back in your medical bag, put them in your home supply, whatever, and for sure that they're sterile again. So that's really handy. Those autoclave bags.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, one more thing. I also have this thing that looks like a little toaster oven that pulls down, that has UV lights in it, that is actually used in beauty supply places where you go get your nails done or your eyelashes or whatever they're doing. They have little instruments they use for each customer, and they clean them, and then they put them in these little UV lights. And again, it looks like a toaster oven. You just pull down the top. I got that on eBay. I mean, again, it was like super cheap. I bought that during COVID because I thought if I have to reuse masks or gloves, a sterilizer is not going to help me. It's going to disintegrate them. I can use this UV light and at least, kill something. Of course, I had thousands of masks at that point, so I was okay.
Oh, awesome. Any final thoughts or anything else that maybe we haven't covered about first aid kits or training that you'd want to get out to the listeners?
No, I think I'm good. I mean, I saw a question was like 5 herbs I want to grow. I mean, the things that come to me are rosemary, lavender, tea tree,
clove, I think.
Clove is kind of difficult to grow, but it would be great. No, you just stopped me. Eucalyptus, if you could, would be really helpful. And chamomile. I think chamomile is really, really helpful. So those would probably be my top 5.
Awesome.
I know we've discussed it on a previous show and we've touched on it a little bit in this one, but your guys' book, the Survival Medicine Handbook, the Essential Guide for When Help is Not on the Way, 4th edition, is a fantastic resource.
Well,
thank you.
Absolutely should be in the library of every prepper.
Yes.
In hard copy. It is a fantastic resource. And I feel we owe it to the listeners to just mention it here, that it's something that they should be pursuing. So kudos to you guys for such an incredible resource.
Well,
Thank you. This was our COVID project. I found him one day pulling the old book apart, and I was like, no, what are you doing? He's like, you know what I'm doing. Next thing I know, the whole dining room table is full of all the chapters.
And the problem was,
and we had to go through each chapter.
And the problem was,
redo it.
Is that when we finished rewriting the book, remember the third edition is a 6x9 book. It turned out that it was going to be 1,250 pages. And so this one is 8x10 and smaller font and
smaller margins.
Just has so much more information.
Oh yeah, the margins are terrible. I have so many words. It's hard to say. Little bitty margins.
Nope.
There we go. Anyway.
So anyhow, we had to make the book actually physically bigger to contain all the information that we put in it, and we keep it up to date also, and it's one of those books that it's just sort of unique in that it's just written with the assumption that something has happened. There you go. Something has happened, and you're never going to see a doctor again. You're never going to be able to access a hospital again. That it's going to be you, the average person, is going to be the highest medical resource left for the remainder of all time. And the book, from the beginning from the first page to the last page, never tells you to go to the hospital, never tells you to go to the doctor. That's a pretty unusual thing for a medical book, because it assumes they no longer exist. And even books like Where There Is No Doctor end a lot of their chapters with "and go to the doctor" and go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's an unusual book in that sense. So we wrote it specifically in that mindset.
Right.
And it's in that mindset that we've written our more than 1,500 articles on our website at doomandbloom.net. All of those, I mean, the book, you have to buy the book, but these articles are all completely free, of course. And our mission is to put a medically prepared person in every family.
I suggest anybody listening head over to store@doomandbloom.net and grab a copy of the book, because it is absolutely fantastic. And like Scott mentioned, it's a great resource, and it should be on every prepper's bookshelf for sure.
Thank you.
I put the Amazon link to your author page in the notes as well for the chat.
Thank you so much. It's very nice of you.
Awesome.
All right. With that, shall we move into the podcast challenge?
All right, assemble yourself a basic first aid kit based on your personal needs. Tell us something unique that you put in yours. Usually you can find your supplies for a customized first aid kit at like a safety supply store or wherever you choose anyways. Worst case, you can buy a pre-made one. Every year Costco sells one in the springtime. Item number is usually 911 plus the year, so this year would be like 911-2024. The bag alone is worth $30. It's got all the fold-outs just like Amy's bag there, and it's good value for money. Or uline.ca. That's another place to get one. So, or Rapid Survival if he has any. I don't know.
Got a few kicking around.
There you go. Awesome.
There we go. All right, what do we got for upcoming events?
I just threw a link in the show chat as well for a local way to find a first aid course in your area. So redcross.ca, it'll be /find a course.
And of course, we've got the annual Preppers Meet coming up July the 11th to the 14th. So if you check out annualpreppersmeet.com, like we've been mentioning, it's a fantastic event. Tons and tons of like-minded individuals are going to be there. And they've expanded this year to new grounds. So bigger space, lots more area for people to camp out and check out. So if you're around July 11th to 14th, it's definitely worth the check out. Early bird tickets are still available. So check out the website. And that's in Desborough, Ontario. Deal of the week.
I found a great first aid box that you can use. It's a plain old ammo crate at Cabela's for $19.98 right now. It's on sale, and link will be in the show notes.
Awesome. Well, I'll bring episode number 228 of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, of course, your favorite podcast app. Please submit a review. It does help other people find us. And again, thank you very much, Dr. Alton and Nurse Amy, for spending some time with us this evening and sharing your knowledge and wisdom. It's always appreciated when you guys come out, and it's always one of our most popular shows.
Well, thank you. We're very honored to have been
asked
to be on the show. And thank you guys so much for what you do for the preparedness community.
You guys are awesome.
And I will reiterate the thanks for coming out. A ton of information, especially for a lot of our new listeners who are just getting going and looking for a way to get started. Really good information. So we do record these shows live on YouTube. We're also on Facebook. If you want an early peek at the shows, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast, and click the notifications tab. That gives you an alert when we're going live. If anybody wants to reach me, you can reach me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca, or I am frequently on our Discord channel.
Scott can also be reached at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
And Dr. Alton, do you guys have other than Doom and Bloom, do you have a contact info?
Oh, you'll find us at not only doomandbloom.net, but you'll find our YouTube channel, Dr. Bones, Dr. Bones, Nurse Amy. Our podcast is called the Survival Medicine Podcast. Our Twitter is @Prepper Show.
All of this can be found at the top of doomandbloom.net. All the little icons, you just click on them. Find the YouTube, the Facebook, Instagram, our podcast. All of that is very clickable. So just remember doomandbloom.net. There's the store. You can click on there to get to the store also, which is a separate website.
Awesome. You can reach Ian directly by emailing me at theislandretreat@gmail.com. And you can also find me recording on Canadian Patriot Podcast, which is also on YouTube, recording Monday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern. Took over 2 groups on gab.com, which is Ham Radio Canada, and Homesteading and Preparedness Canada.
Awesome. You can check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com. Get me there on the live chat. You can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. So thanks for joining us. Until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
and keep learning.